YouTube chat. I don't know if Edra or Sadie, you want to take questions or you just want to chat it out about anything.
Let's take, do we have some questions? We can take questions.
Yeah.
As of right now, we don't, but we could wait a second as the YouTube does like 10 seconds. So anybody on the YouTube or here in the Zoom, definitely if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or write it on the chat. Either way would work as we have everyone coming out. But great job. Congratulations, you guys.
I have a question for Edra.
Okay.
Are there any other weird recipes, and where did you get these recipes from that are not in the video?
Oh, well, these ones I've learned from when I was a kid. So, and some of them are still, you know, like full on like used, like people make sandwichitos. These are things that people consume. So it's not, yeah, it's not strange. There's other things that are more involved, like there's one that is called piñón, which is like a lasagna version using plantains and ground meat and the red peppers that I use for the sanguchito recipe. So it kind of looked like a lasagna. You put it all together and put egg. I never have made it myself, but my mom used to make it a lot. And it was like spectacular looking. It looked very fancy. It sort of feel, you know, like most of these recipes feel like a version of like an Americana recipe that was like adapted to like the Puerto Rican version of this American recipe. So like that recipe remind me of the green bean casserole. It's sort of like the same principle. So they actually put those green beans from the can, put them with the ground meat to make this kind of layered type of lasagna. So, you know, another reason I like this project is because it instigate a little bit for storytelling of things that you experience, you know, perhaps during your childhood, like especially during this time, like during the 80s, it was like sort of like from the 50s to the 80s. So this is the industrialization of food and how that kind of food become part of the tradition, and it's just strange, you know. I grew up in a household that was celebrated our relationship of Puerto Rico with the United States, and that is not very typical for like an artist, you know. For example, so when I was in college, you know, I realized that a lot of my colleagues were sort of more inclined to be a part of like a independent party, and my parents were like pro-state all the way, always. And so I start questioning, you know, the reasons, you know. So I felt like during my childhood, I experienced some type of like assimilation of this culture of the 50s industrialization. I kind of brought into the table, you know, like literally into my plate and the kinds of things that I consume. I was telling the Chiquimark and Sadie yesterday about going to Pete's Market in Oak Park and experiencing like seeing cans of Chef Boyardee. I haven't seen these cans of Chef Boyardee in a while, but I don't know, I stumbled and saw them, and I always think about them as something that I experienced during my childhood, something that I couldn't understand in terms of the flavor. There's like a variety of types of Chef Boyardee, like the spaghetti and the lasagna and the ravioli, and they all taste exactly the same. And I remember when I was a kid, I will ask my mom why they taste exactly the same. You know, so and I think the first time, I think I'm gonna tell a little story if you don't mind. You know, I brought that sausage that is, the brand is called Dak, and Dak is a Dutch from Denmark, a brand from Denmark, and it's still very, very popular. Like the only place I see this place of Dak is in Puerto Rico. Like I cannot find them here. I ordered that online to get it to use it for this video. And when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the flavor of Dak. It was like, I love this kind of salami sausage. And it will never be, like, it will always be at parties, you know, like my parents wouldn't buy it, but during, you know, the holidays, I will see it. I'm like, oh my God, there's the Dak. And back in the day when there was no internet and people consume things from television and radio, and people use the postal office, you know, constantly. My mom participated in the sweepstakes. You know, the sweepstakes, it was like this kind of inviting people to send the packaging of the food that you consume, clean it, put it in an envelope, send it, and that you will be running for a prize. And my mom participated in the sweepstakes for Dak ham, and she actually won. she won a trip to Denmark. And that was the first time I traveled out of Puerto Rico. I went with my mom to Denmark, and we were promised to have a tour of the Dak factory, and it never happened. Oh. They didn't make it happen. But we saw like all the touristic attraction. My mom was not a traveler at all, and very conservative. But one clear memory I have of this trip is that when I tasted the foods in Denmark, I was blown away by the taste. And I kept, you know, like, you know, when I became I was a kid, I think I was like 8 years old. So as an adult, reflecting on that memory, I realized that it was probably like really good quality cold cuts and meats and cheeses. And I was like, why this tastes so amazing, you know? So it kind of, and then traveling, I had like the best food experiences of my life. And I know now that it's not because I had exceptional food when I was traveling. It was because I've been eating this kind of, you know, kind of like fake food, you know, for a long time. So it kind of made me a little sad about my childhood and sort of like the acceptance of this type of food. But also it's weird because it's also nostalgic. It's like you know, like I wouldn't deny I tasted some of this food after I made it, some of them, and then I was like, I cannot have this. I've been trying to practice vegan, you know, and like just healthy lifestyle because I have arthritis, and my family have gone through arthritis and diabetes, and these are really, you know, high numbers in Puerto Rico, people with diabetes and health issues because of food. So I just see the connection in all of these different subjects. So that's why I'm enthusiastic about this project and hopefully what it instigates, you know. You guys did an amazing job, Jose. Oh my gosh. Yeah. John, please, amazing. I love your interventions with the information and the images. what a fantastic collaboration. I'm very inspired.
Did you see that Celia Cruz was like supposedly part of like the Socialist Party? Since, like
Of
when he was
course.
22, apparently. Yeah, I found those weird fun facts and how Gran Combo was like in an airplane accident. I was trying to find more facts like that, but
Yeah, some
Celia
of
Cruz
these
is
celebrities are pretty fascinating. They're pretty fascinating. I have done work on Edie Chacon and have listened to all her interviews and learned a lot about her. You know, someone that taught call herself to be a very shy person, and then she do this extravagant, you know, dance and like her persona as Iris Chacon. And she talked about coming from a family of intellectuals, and like she have lawyers and doctors in her family. And she say that she's a very shy person, but I grew up a very shy person as well, and I think I can relate to sort of the adopting a character to, you know, to explore a subject. And in her case, she definitely is such an important figure in Puerto Rico because it was about sexual liberation, and it was like in, you know, broadcast television. It was like Family Hour. This is like a someone that had a name. Her dancers were under her name. They were the Chacon dancers. She was not only you know, like a exotic dancer on television, but she was a comedian, and she was an actress, and she was a recording artist. And her recording uh, music career is so interesting. So I'm never done with Iris Chacon as a subject to study because it's such an interesting person. Yeah. So Celia is Cuban, so I think I never kind of developed an interest that so close because I used to watch Iris Chacon like, you know, every week, and I was a kid.
Is there
And
an Edie Chacon documentary that you recommend? Like, is there like a biopic of
I
her
don't
or
think
not
there's
yet?
anything of such a thing. Yeah, I don't think. I'm sure someday there will be something.
Sometimes in
Maybe
Netflix.
we should start working on it.
Yeah, you should
We
start
work
it.
with Hayes. Yeah, like she's
He's a visual
older
director.
now. Yeah, I'm incredibly obsessed with this person as a like as a character, as a her contribution. Yeah, I've done work about her, and I think I keep thinking that this is still part of the thing that I have to continue to develop because it's pretty relevant. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there like any like sex and drug stories from her? Do you know? Because you know, if it's like on Netflix or a movie, there has to be sex and drugs.
She wrote a book. That's something that I know. Uh, some years ago, I don't remember what year, but I traveled a lot to Puerto Rico to see my mom, and my mom used to look at the paper all the time, and she knew that I was doing a project on Iris Chacon. I did a show about her on 2019 that was at the MCA, and uh, she saw on the newspaper that Iris Chacon was doing an interview, or she was doing a lecture at a gay club in Puerto Rico, and I was there in Puerto Rico, so I got to go to this lecture, and the lecture was about her life during the 80s and AIDS, and how she lost a lot of her dancers during that time because of the AIDS epidemic. And you know, in her career, she retired from dancing and then subscribed to an evangelic religion uh, to because she was so unconsolable from this incident, you know, that she retired for a while. and but the evangelic religion, they stole a lot of her money, and yeah, it was a disaster. It was a fiasco. But what a yeah, very moving story. Yeah. Where's Sadie?
I'm right here.
Hi, Sadie.
Hi.
Let's talk about your awesome playlist. I asked about a song because I was like, what is
Was it the last song?
I don't even. I think it was the second song. It was so great.
I don't have the playlist in front of me, but I can send it to you. But yeah, the playlist I pulled from, I have actually been working on that playlist since we were in Brazil. And so I started putting together music based off of what we played during happy hour that day. And then kind of refocusing a bit more, because it was including like Caribbean music and Latin American music. And then I cut it down to focus more on Puerto Rican culture and tangential Caribbean-based music in the Americas off that. So the playlist is a bit more of traditional and post-war music, and kind of looking at different genres, including like bomba, plena, boogaloo, salsa, there's merengue, there's also some bachata on there. And then it touches on some reggaeton and pop music as well. So you have the diasporic subjects of the Caribbean-based music in Puerto Rico through the States and other places. And so what I usually think about in the music that I curate for playlists have been focusing on tradition, cultural preservation, and also these notions of resistance, but also including moments of joy and celebrating interconnectedness and intimacy of people. Because I think that's also important to think about when you're thinking about resistance and how people hold space for each other. So I think that this playlist has a nice, well-rounded aspect of that. And then so for the video, there was more contemporary versions of traditional music with modern music to kind of keep the flow and the energy high and give a vibe for the cooking show, and also for participants to just vibe out, and move a little bit and connect with the subject. So
Sadie, I feel like I learned so much from just being able to listen to and have the track list before, so I could match up, the album covers that, John and I were just finding and trying to fit into the video. And yeah, I noticed, because you were referencing the originals, not the mixes in some of the cases, like from the track list, that like how much you do as a DJ to change up the tempo of things, or to like mix them properly with the song that you want to play it into. So it's kind of like a nice lesson in DJing, just as a not DJ.
Yeah. I think about just with my coming to develop my own research on music, a lot of me being interested in other forms of music came through just the generational experience of coming up with hip hop and like house music that was like sampling disco or jazz and these other forms of music. And so I ended up studying jazz because of what I learned through sampled music, right? And I've taken just that experience with me into my DJ practice. And what makes DJing exciting for me is to find modernized versions of old music and making it new and reintroducing it to people. And it's also been a way to bring together generations of people that may not otherwise share music interest,
And it keeps it alive. The music has its own life and comes back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the playlist. I believe you. Oh wait, are you? Oh wait, I'm sorry. No, I saw. So the YouTube stream has like a delay, and I saw you talking. I'm like, oh wait, I might introduce you, but yeah, even like the Spotify playlist, I definitely encourage everyone to check it out. It has so many good stuff, just to vibe out on a weekend. Um, and yeah, thanks so much for putting it together. I have a question from Jose Rosa, our graphic designer in residency. Thank you so much, Jose, for making the recipe book. He has a question. It says, with food trends moving towards the use of non-processed food and vegan recipes, how do you see the evolution of Puerto Rican food? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wonder about the right now, the impact after the hurricane, what is going on. But I think since like 2015, there have been interest in developing, farming in Puerto Rico. I think people are very aware of the status of Puerto Rico, and like foods being imported is like 85% of what people consumes come from somewhere else, and that's a lot. Like the seafood or the meats, even the rice and beans and coffee, it comes from like other parts of Latin America. It comes from the US, and also even from China. So I think at the end, it's all so connected, the politics with the food and agriculture, because because of the uh, unstable political climate. It will jeopardize, the food stability of the island if people don't take agriculture seriously, because who knows, like what will happen if people don't cultivate. There is very uncertain, like uh, when the foods come from ships from different parts of the world. So there was a point where there was a type of increase, on agriculture. But I think the farming is I think the thing that people need to continue thinking and working on it, and supporting the local farmers.
Yeah, thank you. I heard that Puerto Rico started well, a long time ago, right? I guess their focus away from agriculture was towards like medicine, right? Like medical production and stuff, like vaccines and experiments and in 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 medicine. I don't know if that could relate to uh, what's going on in the food industry wise, but it's definitely a lot of interconnectedness. What popped into mind was the if we're talking about any political movements or any movement work um, in Puerto Rico, what happened last year with the charolas and the perreo combativo um, protests for Ricky. I believe the president was called Ricky. I remember the story was Ricky Renuncia. Which ties into what Sadie's work, definitely like thinking about moments of resistance through music, which which happens, and there's some music is one of those apparatuses or vehicles to put that up in the front and make it I learned a new word the other day, abolish, and I can't even say it. It's like abolition but also delicious, so they put it together. It's like abolitious. So like thinking about like how any revolution or any abolition work needs to seem or needs to be so irresistible and so beautiful that it's abolitious. So I'll send over the graph that I saw it, but yeah, and I think that's what music does, and I think that's what food does too. Like just makes it delicious as well. Even though sometimes it does come out of precarity and austerity measures from the state. And that's why I enjoy this work and I enjoy this conversation with both of you that connects those two histories and discourses together. But yeah.
I just wanted to add a thing, like with thinking about food justice, I think sometimes it starts small. Like you have like Urban Pilon that also does like, they also have a vegan Puerto Rican food menu, with the work that they do. So sometimes it's based individually or, start small.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, just a shout out to the YouTube streamers. If you have any questions, I don't know if anybody else let me view your beautiful faces right now. I just have it in full screen of the speaker, but let me change the view here. If anyone has any questions, thank you, Luis, De Jesus, Dan, Ana Mercado,
Yes,
JC.
I'd like to know what happened to all the food.
What happened to all the food?
Yeah, what happened to all the food, Edra, that you made?
Just a shout out to the YouTube streamers. If you have any questions, I don't know if anybody else in the view your beautiful faces.
What happened to all the food? Well, some of them is on the fridge. Some of them have to say goodbye. Yeah, it's yeah. It just I cannot eat a lot of this food because it's with arthritis. It's just impossible. Like I just have to be very careful about that type of food. Like my body will really feel it. So yeah.
I grew up eating a lot of that processed food too. My mom's single mom, working class. She's a security guard, so like food insecurity is real and felt, and like I understand it 100%. But like it's just daunting for me to imagine so many people that don't have access to where the food deserts are. We talked about that like way back in the beginning when we were planning and talking about all of this, that like even if I grew up in Logan Square and I had access to the corner store, and there was a big box grocery store around a couple of blocks away too, we didn't have the mentality of buying the certain things, right? It was like you said, the raviolis, and it's just hard it's hard to imagine that so many people right now are needing food, and like how do we educate everybody on this subject better? Not just like having the food, but how do we like change all our diets, right?
The last time I went to Puerto Rico, I was going to the supermarket, and there was a tiny business of a farmer that was selling his produce, and I decided to just buy all my produce from this individual, and I feel like that should be the way that people should be supporting, because it's not uncommon. There's a lot of farmers that have their trucks and their little businesses, and they have the produce that they cultivate, and those are scattered around the island. But you see, like what happens is that like during the time when of the when the plantations were happening, and most of these plantations that were run by Americans and had Puerto Rican workers, they were not well paid, and it was kind of in difficult conditions, and mostly for the sugar cane. That was the most prominent like kind of product, and so there were the sugarcane plantations, and the I think that taking the role of the farmer was called jibaro, and the term of jibaro comes from kind of a derogatory term. You know, it's sort of like calling the worker a peasant, and so the farming as a form of work, as an employment, it was it became it had a bad stigma. You know, it had like a bad reputation, and it was associated with ignorance, which is completely, you know, is unbelievable. You know, it's such a sophisticated thing to farm, to grow food. But back in the day, that's kind of like, I think that is the history of why farming had such a bad stigma, and it's a stigma that have carried on through the years, and it's now that other places are farming and everybody is embracing organic food, and now everybody's like, now we need to start embracing farming. But it just have a difficult history that it was really hard for people to break out of. So that's what I think.
Yeah, and I think that extends to like this idea of like the urban and the rural, and how that stereotype of people who live in the rural, el campesino, aren't as educated or aren't as modern, as a byfactor of modernity that, you know, people that the state wants to push with new technologies like trains and stuff. But we could see parallels to that here in the States too. I feel like, especially, you know, El Barquero, like in Texas, you know, there's that iconography of like the stereotype of a Mexican man. What's it called? Like he's leaning and he's sleeping with like his hat down. I forgot that he has a name, but it's like that caricature of farmers or people who live in rural areas as lazy and uneducated individuals that stem from, you know, racism, classism, you know.
Yeah, it's another way of dissuading people from taking care of themselves and feel comfortable with the dependency, you know, that the you know, the the dependency that colonialism provides.
Yeah, and if we wanted to extend it more contemporary, say like in Guatemala, or like in indigenous communities in Mexico, or in Ecuador and Peru, etc., where we have the Banana Republic, the legacy of a Banana Republic, or like any Starbucks, you know, buying off coffee, like lands and lands of to produce coffee, right? So that pushes away people who were taking care of the land in these countries, very rightfully so, like by themselves, like no one was bothering them, you know, until the state comes in and grabs the land from people who were taking care of it to produce for themselves. So which causes the migration to the States, right? So yeah, not to go out dark.
Have any of you
like
ever
sad.
heard of or seen this film? Can you hear me? Yeah, have you ever heard of or seen this film by Bruce LaBruce called The Revolution Is My Boyfriend? If you know Bruce LaBruce, he's like a quasi porn art maker who makes amazing films. And then one of his films that I saw at a very tender age in high school was centers around like a bunch of radical revolutionary types in Europe somewhere, kidnapping the son of a corporation who is making like cereal like out of cornflakes. And the reason that this radical queer activist group kidnaps the son is because they want to seduce him into becoming part of their cause to dismantle the corporation that his father owns. And the reason they want to do all of that is because their conspiracy theory is that the high fructose corn syrup in the cereals that his father produces are being intentionally pumped into the human race as a means of classification and like control of the people, which sounds like a bizarre conspiracy, but I believe is actually quite true. And so like all these things that we're talking about, like the effects of the processed foods on our body and like, how that manifests decades later after you eat it when you're a kid, the obesity in the US and Puerto Rico and all over the place, like these levels of health conditions that are brought on by the food that we eat, like have, a lot to do with what Edra was saying, and like these banana republics that you're talking about, John, like everything that, I don't know, just ranting about this silly movie, but it's not that silly, I guess.
I have something that happened recently with me. I was on social media, and a couple months ago when there was that whole sort of a thing around Goya foods, and the CEO of Goya was meeting with Trump.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Luis, but do you mind lowering down the volume of the streaming? You're cutting off a little bit. I'm sorry.
Okay, how's that?
Better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Better?
Do you have a TV on, Luis, or something on?
No.
No, I hear somebody else.
Oh, it's probably Jay cooking in the background.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Do you mind lowering down the volume of the streaming?
Can you hear me?
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Go, yes. Thank you.
So anyway, you remember a couple months ago when the CEO of Goya Foods met with Trump, and it created this big, thing in the press, and there was a protest against Goya, and all this stuff was happening. Anyways, I have some cans of gandules in my pantry, Goya. And of course, I didn't want to be supporting Trump or anybody associated with Trump. So I decided that I would cut off the labels off the can, and with the magic marker, I wrote gandules, so I would know exactly what it was. Anyways, I posted this thing on Facebook, and I got the most kind of vicious attack from that. Yeah, because some guy here, a local guy, actually, a local artist, believe it or not, attacked me because he said, it wasn't so much the politics of it. It was the fact that he said, how can you even eat that garbage? And he called it garbage. And I was like, whoa. I was like, dude, I mean, there are a lot of people. I was raised on canned foods and canned beans and everything. And I said, there are a lot of people in this country and throughout Latin America and the world. That's just all they can afford, to eat, to feed their 4 kids or whatever is canned beans or canned foods like this. So there is this stigma associated with, and he came back and he said, I only eat whole foods, things that are organically grown. There's this whole stigma associated with with, you know, processed foods. But the reality is very different. The reality is there are a lot of people who still cannot afford to buy, you know, foods that are grown organically because they're a lot pricier, you know. Anyways, he basically was calling me elitist, you know. Anyways, this went on and it turned into a big thing, and I just decided, forget it. You know, it's like there's no trying to make sense or talking sense into it.
No. And I agree with you that yeah, it's eating organic food and eating good foods nowadays is expensive. So a lot of people just can't afford it, you know. I buy the basic you know, fruits, vegetables, and some fish products, some, you know, chicken product, but still, like, if you decide to eat organic, it's going to be definitely more expensive. And I guess it also requires like having a reason to sort of upgrade, you know, because you inherit all this. For me, it was, I definitely won't be a snob about buying a can of beans, you know, but I learning about, you know, the whole foods will make me decide I want to eat healthier. I had an aunt that died of diabetes and another aunt that lost her leg because of diabetes. So and having also my mom with arthritis and had like 2 knee replacements. I believe 100% in the power of food. Like I know like what food does, you know, and I mean I experimented myself, you know, like just modifying, you know, like these traditional foods with the whole foods, you know. But it's, you know, it's a very complex world, right? Like some of the foods will alleviate, you know, like you know, hunger. Like it's like canned beans are sacred for a lot of people, you know. So
Well, in the events of
that's a political, you know, like attack, right?
And the necessity in places like Puerto Rico, where they are very susceptible to these major hurricanes that can basically destroy an entire crop across the island.
Yes.
They only have canned foods, you know, dry goods. So it's, you know, it's a funny thing. I mean, there's a stigma associated with it, but in the end, you have to try to find a balance, you know?
There's gotta be a balance. I agree. Yeah. When the Hurricane Maria happened, yeah, the only place that was open was in my neighborhood was a little local business that of, you know, like that has some produce and had canned goods, you know. So I was like, yeah, gonna get the canned foods and whatever I can, you know, right now for this time, because who knows, you know. They will come handy, especially in the island that is so unstable.
Sure.
There's John and Jose, there's great feedback like going on. Just in case like I can hear echo of like the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's the
Kind of calm down.
yeah. I just muted everyone right now. So yeah, and it's weird too with the Hurricane Maria. Like it's been a couple years now. I'm just interested of like what's like I haven't been in Puerto Rico in a second. So I'm not sure exactly what's the current movement happening. But it's thinking about the future of the territory. As sometimes we always forget, for some reason, people always forget that it is a territory in the intersection of colonization. But and seeing the debates of whether it should be a state or like the 51st state or its own independent country, like existing in that space of Puerto Rico to make decisions like the future of crops might be, it's interesting to think of politics and policy making within a territory of the United States. So I just always think about the future imaginations of like, oh, what could be like the utopia that we all want to like exist in, but definitely in territories, it's I'm not super familiar with how territories would work on their own liberated decision makings.
It's not like how you call it, like it might be like even like a radical way of thinking, but like everybody should farm. You see, like in Puerto Rico, it's a lot of fertile ground, you know, like everybody can have a tree of something. You know, like if everybody had trees of fruit and vegetable, a lot of people do it in their backyard. You know, they can grow plantains, they can grow, we always had like some kind of fruit. We have guayabas now. My mom always wanted a tree of something in the house. We had panapen, we had plantains as well, and guineos. And my father, when he was alive, I think maybe like 10 years ago, he habilitated a wild land that was in land in front of the house where I grew up. It, you know, it's just wild land that is fertile, and he created a little farm with trees, and there was like even an inauguration by the neighborhood, and people like to grow things. It's just that it need to be more aggressive, more purposeful, because it's, you know, who knows, it might be necessary someday. And I think if people kind of like make it a part of their education, like teach their kids to farm, and everybody get into farming, because it's such a fertile land, there's no reason why they need to be eating, you know, bananas from other countries when they can have their own bananas. You know, that doesn't make sense.
Hey, Edra, I think you hit a really good point, because I think the challenge is that a lot of people don't realize how to go about, you know, assuming some sense of control over the foods that they eat and that they grow. And your father is a good example of somebody who saw this vacant, you know, parcel of land in front of his home and decided to basically take it over. But there's so many things, very similar situations like that throughout Puerto Rico and here in the United States, where communities, it starts with just one single person recognizing that, hey, this is an opportunity for us, for me and my neighbors, to actually grow our own foods, and we can start a community garden, you know. And that's happened a lot in cities, the inner cities. And I know when I lived in New York for many years, there were a lot of these kind of like pop-up community gardens that were created back in the, you know, in the last 20 years or more. And you know, Puerto Rico, I see that as the perfect example of something that could happen very similar. You know, there are a lot of.
I think it's happening, actually. I think it's happening.
And especially in a place where you can grow foods 24/7, you know, around the year, and it has, you know, the most fertile land on this earth, and gets plenty of rain. You know, that these things just like miraculously, you know, you can grow a banana overnight, basically, you know. And so it's great to hear that these things are happening there. And I think a lot of it has to do with the new, sort of a younger generation
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
are sort of educated about these sort of things.
Yeah, and I guess it's good that is something that became important in the US, because like, you know, I think it's the condition of being a colony just inevitable that you know, that people you know won't be in touch with what is happening in the US, you know, like it's just being the condition of being a colony for so many years is, and people pick up on it, and they start doing it, you know. So I kind of think it's awesome that it became sort of in vogue, like the farming trend, because there is actually a necessity. Like it's important because of how unstable it is politically, and who knows what will happen. I certainly hope, you know, like, you know, we don't lose what we have, because it will be drastic, you know, and I will hate to see the island kind of like without any support. It just need real support. But people taking action, they, you know, they're just it kind of they're protecting themselves by taking action, by just doing it, you know, by farming. And farming, it need to be sort of like you know, like first and foremost, you know, like kids should be farming, like everybody should be like planting trees, making, you know, being be a part of their education, because I think that will be a way of remediating like
Well,
years of dependency, years of food dependency.
Yes, it's a difference between feeling dependent and feeling that you have some sort of control over your own life and destiny.
Yes.
You know, that you don't have to rely on some outside source basically to feed you every day, that you can actually grow your own food. You know?
Because I think that will be a way of
Yeah, and I want to maybe tie in about, well, just to tie it all in about diaspora. I think generational diaspora. I know a few a few folks who have farms back in their own country, but because of migration, whether it being forced or whether just being voluntary and privileged migrations outside their country, they left their land untaken care of. So this ties into what was maybe Jose Luis was saying about kids in the chat of teaching them, or how does that passing on of knowledge and exchanges of importance to take care of yourself through taking care of the land, how does that conversation get started with youth? Sometimes it sounds like meta, but then again, I'm like, well, no, we could literally just tell them just take care of the plant, because I know that's what my grandma did. Like they would just like, hey, go get me a cilantro that's in the backyard. It's this one, and then go water it. You know, here in Chicago, right? So it happens, and sometimes in planning these things, it's like the meta of it kind of self-destructs the actual teaching and knowledge of it, and passing on that knowledge. So yeah, just some thoughts of teaching and agriculture. But yeah, I don't know. We talked. That was a great conversation. I don't know if anyone has any last minute conversations or topics. Something that did came to mind, I guess, before we all log off was like, in work, like any work, whether it being like agricultural work or just like going to work, I think music does play an important role of getting you ready. What came into mind when I said Banana Republic and then thinking about music was how Panama was the birth of reggaeton, essentially, and how that just came out of just the Panama Canal workers that were building that out, and the aesthetics of it all. It's kind of like, you know, thinking about jeans, how they were used as a utility as opposed to a fashion statement, but over time it does become fashion. So I was just thinking of those moments that when we are working the land or just working and laboring off the music that we listen to or the music that's made through those moments, to either like soothe your soul, soothe your spirit, or help you work, is important too. So the playlist of agriculture should be hand in hand with like teaching the next generations this type of work. And for sure, we have Sadie's playlist to give up. Like, here, listen to this. Why'd you go mow the lawn or something? I don't know, but there's so much interconnectedness there that we could definitely use music, use storytelling, use food to just teach the youth and teach next generations and other kids, and even older generation too. I mean, that's a little ageist of me of assuming that older people, like older generations, don't want to learn. You know, like these stuff could get retaught or taught to different different generations and different peoples, different spirits and souls who want to learn at any point in their time, right? So yeah, just a little thoughts about that. Yeah. I have a question here. John, do you work with youth? I do not currently work with youth. However, there's this big project that I'm not big, but 2021, I am going to start a teen art program, not a teen, just an art program here in Hermosa, outside of Chuquimarca. That's not going to be related, but I will be working with youth in the future, this coming year. But as of right now, with Chuquimarca, it's more college student age, post-college student, and just the general art community that wants to engage with the project. And yeah, I have Aileen. Thank you Aileen Cortez says, thank you so much for putting this together, everyone. A carefully curated, fabulous night. Sorry, I had my camera off. I was washing dishes and bailando with your playlist, Sadie. Love the food making Edra and integration music album cover videos. Thank you so much, Aileen, for coming and those beautiful words. And yeah. Oh yeah, and Jose Luis does work with youth. He was a librarian at the U Media CPL, Chicago Public Library here in Chicago. Maybe, I don't know if you had any youth specific questions that Jose Luis could answer, feel free. Or I don't know if Jose Luis, you want to talk about working with youth, I'm not sure. But if not, taking last minute. Oh, and for our YouTube people, definitely feel free to drop in questions, comments before we log off the night. If not, we could definitely say our final words.
Just want to say thank you so much for all the works you guys do with Chuquimarca. Thank you, Sadie, so much for being just so thoughtful. And this was a very awesome collaboration. I truly appreciate working with you guys. So I hope it's not the last time.
Yes, thank you all. This has been super fun and really made and exploring the subject matter of food and music and the histories associated with that fun to do and to engage in conversation with.
This is a very nourishing conversation on multiple levels. You know, I think thank you for the music, Sadie, and for letting me be a part of the video with you all, Edra and John. It's been fun.
No, yeah, I can't thank Edra and Sadie enough. I feel like they're like the superstars of the Latinx art world here. So it's like when I put out the proposal, I'm like, oh, no one's like, just a few people are gonna get like, propose, and then I saw Edra, and I'm like, oh my God, so appreciative. So I thank you for the work you guys are doing and providing the visual knowledge, the sonic knowledge, the tasting knowledge to have this conversation. So this is all, wouldn't happen without you too. So thank you so much for proposing and working with us, for sure. And I think I will stop the live now. I think this was fun. Everyone in the live, I'll stop the live and then I'll stop Zoom just for like coordinate. But if not, I guess we could say our final goodbyes and finish up our coquitos that we made.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night. Thank you so much for coming.
Mwah.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Good night.